And that's it. Like magic, we are live on the internet. It's just like
Hi.
before. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. We haven't done one of these in a minute because we took a little break, but I'm glad to be back doing it again. And I'm glad that you're the person that we're back doing it with because you do a lot of cool stuff. And I was excited when you said you would talk to me. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So you have a background in pediatric nursing, right?
I'm an emergency room nurse, and we take
Okay.
care of a lot of pediatric patients. Yes.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
That's even better. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And you also do nurse training, right?
I am an instructor for ENPC. It stands for Emergency Nurse Pediatric Course.
Okay.
And we have a 2-day course through the ENA that teaches other nurses about pediatric care and pediatric emergencies.
Gotcha. So that's kind of an ongoing education thing for nurses?
Oh, yes. It's been going on for years. It's a certification that most emergency rooms require their nurses to have.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And are they required to get it as soon as they become a nurse, or is there a certain amount of time they have, like a window, or?
When if they're an emergency room nurse.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So it's a different qualification.
Yep. It's called.
And you also do a lot with water safety, which is how I know you.
Yes.
And we haven't met at any of the NDPAs or anything, right?
No, we haven't met. I really just started.
That's right.
Yeah.
Are you planning to go to this one coming up?
No, in November.
It's in April.
In April.
It's in New Orleans.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm about 8 hours from there, so I could probably drive down that way.
Yes, the National Prevention Alliance. They have their annual conference. It's especially for you, it might be a bit rough, but it's eventually it might be a good idea. It's a cool thing.
Yes.
They have the Families United folks that are there, which is neat. They're good people, and you might find benefit talking to them.
I've recently spoken with them and joined up with them, so that.
Yeah, they're awesome people.
Yes, just recently.
When I was on the board of directors there, when I was on the board of directors of the NDPA, one of the, I don't want to say best, but the most powerful things that I did every year was they would always take out a suite in the rooms for parents to go to if it was getting too intense in the conference room and someone needed a break and wanted to go hang out and kind of be in their own space. So they would rent this room for that purpose. And they would invite the board up there one night every year for like a cocktail hour kind of thing. And they had hors d'oeuvres and people to hang out. And part of that session was people would sit in a circle, and each person would go around and tell the story of how they lost their child and kind of what they're doing and where they're at. And it was probably 15 of them, And so by the end, it was both inspiring and draining simultaneously. It was just one after another. But
I feel like
I'm glad I got to do it.
Yeah, I feel like that's how we reach a lot of people, is by sharing our story and showing them that it can happen to them. I was one of those people too, thinking that this would never happen to me, and it did. I lost my son to drowning 2 summers ago. Sorry if you hear some background noise. My daughter's heading out for the bus for school. So, people who teach ISR or sell pool, I mean, you can preach and preach and preach all you want, and people maybe won't listen as well as they would to a parent who maybe lost their child.
Yeah,
as well as you preach, and you do a great job.
Well, thank you.
About it.
But no, you're right. There's no substitute for the experience you offer, and when people can see that obviously you're smart, you're capable, you're not a bad mom. All the things that someone might think.
I thought I was doing everything safe. I was, what my pediatrician recommended and what I knew to do. My car seats were all appropriate and checked. Kept my kids rear facing as long as possible. I had a safe sleeping space for them. My outlets are covered. My chemicals are hidden. But I have a pool in my backyard. And I'm originally from Colorado, and it's really not a thing to have a pool in your backyard there. So the ones that are there, they have laws where you have to have a fence fully enclosed, and in Texas you don't. We made a lot of mistakes with our backyard and our pool and our toddler.
So what happened with Jackson?
So Jackson was 18 months old, And he was very busy boy, and he loved the water. We actually took parent-child swimming lessons, but water acclimation lessons, and he loved the water, loved jumping into it. We would put him in a puddle jumper floaty and let him just swim around the pool. And I had 2 other kids, so I was one of those moms where I put him in the puddle jumper, and I let the puddle jumper babysit him, and he floated around, kicked around, had a great time. So I feel like we set him up for failure there, letting him think that the water was a safe, fun place for him to be. And we have a pool in our backyard, and we had a dog door. Because when my husband and I would both leave for work, I work 12-hour shifts as a nurse, and he works all day. We had to have a way for the dogs to get outside. So we would unlock it during the day, when we would be gone from the house, and when we would return and Jackson would be around, we would lock it. I thought that was good enough. Keeping it locked was going to be good enough, but we all left the house to go pick up my husband from work because his truck had broken down, and I was just too impatient to let the dogs out and use the restroom and come back inside. I figured we were going to be gone for about an hour. So I unlocked the dog door, I opened it up, and we all left the house. When we came back in, I needed a break. My husband and I work opposite each other. It's just how it goes. So when he's at work, I'm a single mom with the 3 kids, and I was tired, and I felt like this was a chance that I could get 5 minutes of rest before we started getting everyone to bed, which can be hectic sometimes, right? So I went into the bedroom. I asked him to watch Jackson. He thought Jackson went upstairs to play with his sisters, and our stairs are gated off, and we have a big game room for them to play in, and it's very safe up there. But it turns out that he found his opportunity with the dog door, which I'd never seen him even mess with before. He never even threw anything outside of it, never really paid attention to it. He must have snuck out there, because when I came out of the room and asked my husband where Jackson was, he said he was upstairs with his sisters. And we called up to them, and they said he wasn't. So my immediate fear was that he had gotten outside and gotten to the pool. And I found him floating face down. I pulled him out, and I started CPR, yelled for my husband to call 911. And we ended up getting his heart rate back, and got him intubated for breathing, and took him to the hospital that I work at, which is like my second home. It's my second family, and stabilized him as well we could, and then flew him down to the medical center in Houston, where he spent 4 days, and he was declared brain dead. But then a few days after that, he donated his heart, liver, and kidneys. So that helped for us to have a week to grieve with him and to still be with him. I know that a lot of drownings that happen suddenly, they don't get that time, and that sudden loss can be much more difficult on the parents. So I'm really thankful that we had that extra time with him. And we've actually been connected with his heart recipient, who is about a year younger than Jackson, and he lives in Anchorage, Alaska. So someday we hope to be able to travel up there and meet this little boy, and I want to listen to his heart and give him a big hug. You know, that part of my son lives on with him.
That's really cool about the heart recipient. I know Paul DeMello has really enjoyed meeting the woman that got, I believe, the kidney of his son, and she just had a baby of her own, and
oh wow,
people thought she would never be able to have children, and she ended up being able to have a kid, and so now he's met the son that his kid's kidney helped create, and it's kind of a cool thing,
Yeah, knowing that your child helped somebody that maybe wouldn't have had a chance. I think this baby was waiting all 7 months of his life in a hospital, had multiple surgeries to his heart, and they were waiting for a transplant.
That's awesome.
And it was a 99% match, I believe, and the way they do transplants and donations is they kind of work, more central. So they would check the Houston area first, and then they would kind of branch out. And we had nobody until where he was at Texas Children's Hospital in Seattle. So I think it was pretty meant to be that this little boy got his heart.
Yeah, and if it went to Alaska, that means that yeah, it's a rare match, which is cool. My mom was a double lung transplant recipient. She got two lungs back in 2010, and yeah, it was an ordeal, obviously. But yeah, so I'm familiar with the transplant thing. I know that there was maybe 8 a year done in Florida. I mean, it was a pretty rare thing. So yeah, it's awesome that he did that. And a heart is hard to come by too. So it's nice. But since then you've I know you've been doing a lot of work in the water safety space, which is how you and I have been in contact. And I know you started I think I'm going to say 2 nonprofits, but I could be wrong.
Oh no, I haven't started a nonprofit.
Not a nonprofit, but I know you've done the PPCD,
Parents Preventing Childhood Drowning.
Right.
I'm one of the founding members, along with Darlene that you interviewed, and Carrie Morrison.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fate how I got connected with them as well, because I was just on the Drowning Support Network on Facebook, talking about, there are so many nonprofits out there that are usually they're named after a child who's lost their life to drowning. And, what do we have out there that combines all of these? I know Families United is a lot of those nonprofits as well. But we need to make our voice bigger, because I didn't even know about them until I started researching them myself. I hadn't seen anybody out in the community. And since then, I've seen a lot of Judah Brown Project, because they're in our area and they're great. I love them. We just did a baby fair on Saturday, and we were both there. So, and I actually represented the hospital during that baby fair.
Oh, cool.
To spread awareness and educate. Right. Yeah. So after I lost Jackson, I was very quiet about the way that I lost him. People would, in the emergency room, when they're a nurse, especially older people, they want to talk with you and connect with you on a personal level. And they'd ask me how many kids I have. And I'd always include Jackson. I'd always say, I have 4 kids, because I had a son since then. And they want to know are they boys or girls, and their ages, and they always want to know all these details. And it's really difficult for me to bring up now, because I lost Jackson, and I feel like I can't leave him out when I speak about my family. So I do share that I had him and I lost him. And I used to tell people that I lost him in an accident, because I was ashamed. I was ashamed that I lost him to something as preventable as drowning. And that, it wasn't an accident that I could save him from. I mean, that, it wasn't a car accident. It wasn't something that I didn't have any control over. I had control over the situation. I felt like people would judge me for being a bad parent, for being neglectful. And I still didn't know that it was the leading cause of death in children under 4. So since I've heard that statistic, it helps me to be able to speak about it more, because I'm not alone. This happens to a lot of people. And I feel like we need to talk about it, and we need to share. It happens to good people. And I thought I was a helicopter mom, not even letting my kids go on the playground slide without me sliding down with them on my lap. I was always very careful with my children, and I still am. But it wasn't until I had my son Asher in the beginning of the spring where I started getting very anxious about having the pool in my backyard and having this toddler now who can walk and who's very curious and even busier than my son Jackson. So I started getting very anxious about it, started to look into things that I could do for him, and I found ISR. And so I started asking people about ISR, and that's how I got in touch with Carrie from Live Like Jake. And they helped get me lessons set up with Teresa Rising, and now I have a forever friendship with her, and we want to just spread the word about survival swimming. I mean, I was ready to get Asher back into a parent-child swim lesson and put him in his puddle jumper for the summer, because I still didn't know any better. I didn't know that those were dangerous things.
Right.
or they could potentially be dangerous things.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and I asked this question, I've been doing this over 20 years now. And, the question I always ask myself, and maybe I can ask you too, is why do you think it doesn't get the coverage it clearly deserves, right? Drowning is, like you said, the number one accidental cause of death for kids between 1 and 4. When I first started, it was number 2, and it's become number 1 since then, which makes me wonder about the efficacy of what I'm doing. But yeah, I think car accidents came down, actually, is what happened. I think drowning stayed the same.
I was just going to say, I think car accidents came down because of seatbelts.
Right.
Click it or ticket came along.
Airbags, better cars.
Airbags in cars, car seat regulations.
Yeah.
Seatbelts, people getting tickets for not having a seatbelt. It was enforced. I don't know if all these laws that are in place, property laws across the nation about pools and pool fencing and stuff like that, are actually enforced.
So they are at first, right? You need and the laws are getting, at least in Florida, they're getting worse. California just passed a great law. California is the best law in the country. Their law is amazing. It requires multiple layers of protection. So you have to pick, they give you a list of 7 items, alarms, fence, cover, etc. And you have to pick 2. It's the only law in the country like that. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
But in Florida, the law was first a fence with a gate, a self-closing gate. And then they took the self-closing gate out. And then they said you could have, really specific hardwired alarms on all the doors and windows. Then they became battery operated. And then they said they could be a different kind of battery operated alarm. And now they recently added that a floating alarm in the pool also works as a substitute.
I hear those aren't as effective.
They suck.
When I started looking into options for Asher.
I wouldn't recommend it.
My son. Mm-hmm.
If I was going to do an alarm, the alarm I would say is it's called the safety turtle. And it's worn on the child. It's really cool. I'm a big fan of Safety Turtle. I'm a big fan of Bob Lyons, who made it. He's a great guy.
I think those are great for, if you go on a vacation, you have a vacation house or something like that, because you can't control them having a fence at the vacation home. You can't control them having a door alarm, things like that. But you can put that on your child.
Yeah, or out on a boat even, it works.
On a boat.
Any kind of, you're right, uncontrolled water environment. But they work, at home too. If you put it on all the time, like you do their pants or a diaper or any of the things they wear, then it can work there too. But yeah, so a lot of these laws, at least in Florida, like I said, have gotten weaker since they started, and they're enforced at the time of the home being built or when the pool is being built. But then that's it. So I know in our case, a lot of times people would put the pool fence up, get past, and then take it down, which destroys me. I mean, it's terrible. We spend a lot of time trying to make sure we make a really nice pool fence, and to know people are putting it in their garage and never using it again, it sucks, But yeah, so why do you think drowning, unlike, car accidents, unlike, we'll say we're in Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and, obviously everyone's heard of breast cancer.
It doesn't get the attention that maybe it deserves.
Right. I mean, it's the number 1 killer accidental kids.
Well, I have a couple theories on that. I feel like I had mentioned before, people are ashamed to talk about it if it's happened to them.
Right.
Also, maybe pediatricians aren't spreading the word about it as much as they should be. My own pediatrician hadn't mentioned it, and I know we're working on that with the AAP, bringing that into more awareness. But I mean, they have so many things that they need to talk about, and maybe here in Texas, there are a lot of pools, so it would be a good place to mention it, but you don't necessarily have to have a pool of your own in order for your child to be at risk for drowning.
Yeah, I couldn't believe the results from Carrie's study. And I feel like I talk about this every time. But, the fact that 85% of parents aren't given any kind of water safety information from their pediatrician. I mean, that's amazing.
It could be as simple as a 30-second conversation, like I had written an article on PPCD about. I mean, you don't even have to go into detail. You can, do you have, this is, toddlers are very busy and curious, and they're drawn to the water. Do you have a pool in your backyard, or have a family member that does? And okay, well, what do you have in place? Do you have a fence? Do you have secure doors? What measures have you taken? And maybe they'll, start a conversation, and then you could just hand them a pamphlet. This is one that I've made for the hospital. that just has barriers listed in it. So it might get you thinking. I also shared my story on the back of it to show that it can happen to you. It happened to me, and this is my son Jackson. Very cute. He looks a lot like my son Asher. Oh. They look very similar. But so that being said, maybe the parents feel like drowning is not as preventable as it really is, that it's kind of out of our control, but we do have control over it. There are things we can do. We can teach them how to save themselves if they fall into the pool fully dressed. And that's what ISR and other survival-based swim lessons will do.
Yeah, and then obviously all the things we can do to make sure they don't get to the pool in the first place.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
But I think we're hopefully making some headway. I think the internet's helping. You know, I think that, you know, the work that we're doing, that you're doing in particular, towards reaching pediatricians is going to make a big difference, you know, maybe in the next few years. And I think results like the study from Carrie is kind of maybe open people's eyes on, you know, just how little is being discussed,
yes.
You know, in a professional setting. You know? So does PPCD have anything coming up event-wise, or I know you guys are just getting started.
We just started. Yes, we, you know, we have the AAP conference, and that's a big thing. We're working on a brochure. That's cool. It's going to be standardized. And we know that every nonprofit has one, but we felt like it was important for us to make one as well, just to represent who we are. And then we want to fill the gaps that maybe don't have a nonprofit that speak out. I have a lot of friends in Colorado. I have family in California, Ohio. So I feel like they don't have to go through all the work of becoming a nonprofit, but they can still represent PPCD because we're parents, and we're, you know, we don't have to be a nonprofit to be involved. It's just about getting the information out there. Maybe dropping off the pamphlets at a pediatrician office, at a hospital. You could speak at an event or host a booth at a community event if needed. But it's just about bringing people together. And when I started looking into what is out there for drowning prevention, bringing people together that's not so corporate, I wanted to find something that was like a Mothers Against Drunk Driving for drowning. You know, those moms got mad, and they were in the legislature. You know, they lost a child, somebody drinking and driving, and they got laws changed, major laws, and people listened to them. So I felt like we needed to band together and become a big voice and get out there with more public service announcements and things like that as well. So that's kind of on my radar, to maybe do ads online or some sort of PSA commercial.
Well, I think it's great. And, you know, I think the more voices we have, you know, talking about it, the better, right? I mean, I wish there was a billion organizations, you know, the more we have going on, then obviously the more it's getting out there, the more people involved, you know, the better it is. And I love your website, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
It's awesome. It's really well done. I was impressed. I even went down and checked out who made it so I could, you know.
Oh, Sarah. Yes, she's great.
Yeah. No, it came out really nice. I was really impressed with it. But in addition to the water safety, I told you I wanted to talk a little bit about the other things that you encounter in the ER, especially when dealing with pediatrics, because, you know, we talked a lot about water safety in general, but I don't usually get a chance to talk about, you know, other areas. And you had mentioned in your email to me about SIDS, that you have seen a lot of SIDS cases this summer.
I have. This summer has been pretty hard in our emergency room with babies.
And, you know, and we hear quite a bit about SIDS, probably more than about drowning, actually, in the news and from doctors. But if it's still happening, why do you think it's still, why this summer? Why in general?
You know, I'm not sure why this summer. I feel like people are still making the same mistakes as far as co-sleeping or maybe falling asleep in a chair with their child. When they fall asleep and their child's asleep, then they're holding them in their arms. It can occlude their airway, where they're not getting any breathing and they can't position themselves to open it back up so they can become asphyxiated or suffocate. Also, big fluffy blankets in the cribs with them, sleeping with a parent in bed. So it's about teaching safe sleeping habits for these children, having a firm mattress without anything else in there, just no pillows or blankets or anything. Yes. So I know that those things contribute to it, but sometimes it is something that's, you can't prevent with a SIDS incident as well. It could be a congenital heart defect that you don't know about, or it could be a variety of things. But the things that you can prevent are definitely important, because I took care of a baby that was sleeping in a chair with a dad, one that was sleeping in a bed taking a nap with a grandpa, and the grandpa rolled over on top of the baby. I've had one this summer that the babysitter had laid down the child on a bed, a full-size bed, and let her take a nap there, and then checked on her a half hour later and noticed that she was blue and she was cold, and she was laying on top of a big fluffy comforter, face down. So once they start rolling, it can create some more hazards as well. So if they're in bed, I've had babies that have rolled off the bed and actually broken their leg, but by hitting a nightstand on their way down. So
Wow.
it's about keeping the baby safe and not letting them sleep on their car seat, especially if you unbuckle that car seat. It's great. It's a great way to get your baby to fall asleep sometimes if you've got no other options driving around in the car, right? But then you need to take the baby out and put them somewhere safe. If you unbuckle it and they slide down, they get their neck cranked up in a position that they can't breathe. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, I know there was one of those recently, and I saw this in the news, and I shared it on Facebook. And I know a lot of people that bring the car seat in from the car, the baby's sleeping, they don't want to mess it up, right? And I don't think people quite appreciate the possibility there.
Yeah, well, you have to make sure when you take the car seat out of the car, you have to make sure that the angle's right too.
Right.
I mean, there's a base that you can put it in. It makes sure the angle's right. So when you're driving around, it's a safe position. But once you take it out and it's not in that same angle, say it's tilted one way more than the other, it could be dangerous.
Yeah, even with the strap on.
Yeah, even with the strap on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the base does all the work in the car. When you take it out, then now you're relying on just your ground, whatnot. So you'd say the main things for SIDS are sleeping related stuff. I mean,
well, I mean, and I think the research has shown. I mean, that's when you find the child unresponsive.
Right.
So, but I mean, like I said, it could be something medically wrong that you just didn't know about until afterwards. But we get parents bringing in their child all the time, and by the time they make it to the ER, they look fine. But at home, maybe they had a period where they didn't breathe or they turned blue. And we call those apparent life-threatening events, or ALTs. And we still take those very seriously and do a workup on them to find out, if they do have an underlying medical condition that could lead to a SIDS event. But it's definitely about, safe sleeping as well, making sure that they don't, put a heavy blanket over their head or roll onto something and suffocate. Could also be, crib bumpers. If a lot of parents let their child sleep in those rock-in plays that are inclined. If they slide down that a certain way and their neck occludes their airway, because their airway is only the size of their pinky finger.
Right.
So if you look at the little baby, and if you turn their head a certain way where it's closed off and they're not strong enough to lift their head yet, it's dangerous. Yeah.
I don't think people think about that quite as much as they should probably, So besides SIDS, is there anything else that you see a lot of that, parents could do to?
Just injuries, toddlers on trampolines cause a lot of broken legs.
Nice. Yeah.
Kids on the monkey bars cause a lot of wrist fractures. So when they fall down, they'll catch themselves with their wrists, and they usually end up breaking both of them. Things like that. Just kids being kids.
Nice. Yeah, we
Choking,
just started
swallowing things that they're not supposed to.
Yeah, that's a big one. We just started a new website, childsafetystore.com, that we're hoping to prevent a lot of those, less serious, but obviously preventable, in-home accidents,
Yes.
But
yeah.
Anyways, well, I knew you wanted to do around this time, so we're perfect.
Okay.
I know you're on your way to work too, so we'll let you do that.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The website for PBCD is, what is it?
parentspreventingchildhooddrowning.com.
Awesome. And you guys are on Facebook?
We're on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome.
But I'm not the best at those social media yet, so I'm still working on adding. But we do want your support, and we don't mean just money. We want people to be involved and to help us out. Donate your time, be a voice, and share your stories about why drowning prevention is so important to you. So please comment on our Facebook and reach out to us. You can email us at ppcdunited@gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, Jenny. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Take it easy, y'all.